Composer Gloves here, and this is the 41st video in the Contact from the Ground Up tutorial series. And today we're going to be talking about, just a mouthful to say, today we're going to be talking about the Convolution Reverb. This is really cool. There's a scary way of talking about this, and there's a less scary way of talking about this, and we're going to talk about the less scary way. So, to get started, we go ahead and grab it from our modules, drop it on there. I've been putting it on the instrument effects for everything currently. There are a few effects. Well, one that comes to mind that I will need to go to the group effects level to do. But anyways, what Convolution does is you can select a sample that's been taken in a room with a long reverb trail. So you're thinking like impact sound. So if we go to impulses, they usually sound like this. And it's just a whole bunch of sounds with some reverb. So there's some sort of transient, and then, just a bunch of reverb. And the idea is to catch the reverb of the room. Then you could drop it into a convolution reverb, and it will analyze your file. And it's actually, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I'm going to say linear because I read that it was linear. I haven't studied reverb that in depth yet, but it can linearly recreate your reverb. And I'm not sure what the implications against a logarithmic scale or anything would really be. I can sort of make some educated guesses, but let's talk about what it actually does. So essentially what it does is you can record a sample in a room, and you can drop it in here, and it will recreate that reverb specifically. So you can drop your own samples in here, or this is the one time where it really does matter a lot. You have your bypass button, and you have your presets. And if you go to factory, you have a lot of options. You can go to just a ton of different things. They've got digital reverbs, and their settings there. This is quite impressive. So they have just a ton of options here. So unless you want to, so I have our flute loaded up. I know I just cut myself off there, but I have our flute loaded up, and that's no reverb. And then if we add the reverb, so that's one version. We're going to cover what they do specifically, but this is a digital. So this real plate reverb, this actually has to do with hardware. These are hardware synthesized reverbs. And you have all these options. But yes, so that is what that is. Or you can get your own sample. Like if I go to our cello sample pack, cello fiend, drop it in there. And it's when you drop samples in it, it gets kind of cool. You can hear the cello in the background because it's taking stuff from that sample. So you get weird things as well. You can, I want to see what this sounds like. That's strange. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I just did a little bit later. But anyways, let's go down these knobs. So we have pre-delay. Well, first you have this sample. This shows you the sample. Let's go to a more typical thing. This is for a piano. So you have your sample name that you're actually using as your reverb that it's getting, analyzing and stuff. It tells you the bit, length, and number of channels. That's the cool thing. This thing supports surround sound. So surround sound. So if you've got something, maybe you're doing some sort of cinematic thing and you want some epic surround sound panning reverb thing going on, you can do that. I have not looked heavily into this, but it supports it. Pretty cool. So we come over here, got pre-delay. So the way delay works is, you have your early refractions and your late refractions, and the late refraction is largely responsible for reverb, but you can't really have late refractions at early ones. But there's a period of time, granted it's a very short period of time, where the sound hits you directly and there's no reverb. This is called direct signal. I don't know. It's a signal that doesn't have any reverb on it. And you can simulate that by going pre-delay. So you could say for like 1.7 milliseconds, no delay, and then the delay gets added. And if we turn this way up to 300, you could have that. So you could create a sort of delay thing on your own if you want, if that's something that you're looking for. But that's what pre-delay does. And usually use it very subtly, and it can just add realism. You have your wet dry. I've seen that 100 times. If you don't know what that is, go watch the other videos in this series, pretty much anything before this. Now you have these latency options. So obviously we've got, so this is kind of processor intensive, right? So these latency options have to do with just basically easing it up on your computer. And you could go all the way out to 23.2 if for whatever reason your computer's crackling or you're getting artifacts in the sound you don't want. Or you go to disable compensation. This will add a latency delay. So your original process will process your original sound will process no problemo. But the disable compensation means that it's going to take a while to process the reverb, but it's usually pretty okay when you're dealing with reverb because it's reverb. It's a delay by definition. So you see, it sounds pretty fine. Oh, well, I have mine still set to 5.8, but disable compensation. And then you can turn it off again just by clicking. Let me see if 23. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make all that big a difference. Now, the big difference is this gets heavier processing on your computer. And so if you've got a Boss computer, if you were running on a laptop, you may not want that. Then you have these cool things. These cool sample rates. This is, again, has to do with, if you watch my DSP video on sample rate, it's the first one, I believe, but not in the playlist. It's labeled number 1, though. The rate at which our sample is played back. And because we're using this mostly for just getting reverb data, you can change the sample rate and mess with things here. Don't worry too much about this. Once you know what it's talking about and you study DSP and things, this may become important to you. But for just general, for something like this, I'm assuming it's not going to be like mega important. Then you have this auto gain option, and this what it does is it keeps your volume levels consistent, because sometimes, especially if you throw a wonky sample in there, you'll get spikes in volume level that wouldn't otherwise be there. Auto gain is there to prevent this. It's essentially a limiter in a way. If you turn it off, you get, as you can see, you get some more severe volume levels, and yeah, just be careful about that, especially if you're wearing headphones. Then you have this reverse thing. Now this reverse thing is the coolest, okay? So you can hit this and it will reverse your reverb. So if I hit note and then wait for it, you can do that. And that is so cool. It reverses your reverb for you because it's a digitally affected reverb and it can do black magic like that. If we were to zoom out here, there it is. I wonder if the alt zoom works here. Nope. You have to use these things to zoom in and out. So just so you know, that's an option. That is way cool. So now you know what I did at the beginning. Now you have this volume envelope. Now this also has to do with the transient master. And the reason the transient master is so cool is the transient master uses volume envelopes rather than compressing gain signal. So what it just did when I hit this is it's showing us what it thinks the volume envelope is of this sample. If you don't know what an envelope is, it's this thing down here. We're going to cover it later on when we get into modulation, but I've talked about it earlier in this series, so you should have somewhat of an idea. And so we can take our volume and we can actually adjust the points and tell it how to interpret our reverb. So we could say quiet right here, louder over here. Just do some weird things. You can't add points, apparently, but you could do stuff like that. Just weird things. So that may or may not be something you desire to do. And now it should be noted that this is still implied on your signal, so you may want to reset whatever it is. So, and so you have this green thing right here. It says ER tail on it, and this is actually directly linked to the IR size knob. And I don't know why it says ER on this one and IR over here. I don't even know what IR stands for. But if you know, drop it in the comments. But essentially what it does is it time stretches your sample. So you could stretch the sample out. As you can see, it got longer, or you can compress it. So it's 150% faster. You know, you got me there. What would that do to your reverb? Well, let's take a listen. And if we zoom it up or make it longer, Your reverb changes pitch a little bit is my guess. I honestly don't really hear a difference. If someone knows exactly what this does, it'd be nice to know. Drop it in the comments. I don't know what ER stands for, but that's what moving it around, I think, does. but you can move it around too. If anyone knows what moving it around specifically does, that'd be cool too. But anyways, that's what this does. Now we talked about, oh, one other quick note. If you hover your mouse over this, you can actually see the full file path of the sample that you're currently using, and you can actually go back and forth between samples in the same folder. So you could drop a whole bunch of things in the same folder and it sounds just fine. So yep. Oh wow, that was okay. So you can definitely hear a difference on this one. That lasts a lot longer. Let's see if we move the tail out. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of shooting in the dark. So if you know, let me know. High pass goes through the reverb and high pass is your reverb. If you don't know what a high pass is, it just takes down the upper end of your sound, the higher frequencies. And the low pass does the same thing. So if we high pass it down to 20 hertz, that's the whole hearing range. So it's interesting because when you put the low pass all the way to 20, you still get reverb. That's what's interesting to me. So I'm not exactly sure what kind of high pass, but they must not be the most substantial curves. If you're into filters, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, don't worry. It will just affect the tonal quality. And this is pretty much the Convolution Reverb. It's a really great system, especially for creating realistic reverbs. This is one of those things I usually don't. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this, but you have this early and late. This is the early settings for the early refractions, and this is the late refractions. We talked about that, especially in the delay one. This is something I go more for the presets on this guy than going and making my own, because they have their own samples. I might mess around with samples and do the reverse thing, but I usually don't mess too much with that. Maybe with the wet and dry, and that's about it there. I usually don't go too crazy on all the additional settings and stuff, but they are there and are options for you, and the volume one is a cool thing to mess with. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. You should just drop a comment anyways, because you're awesome like that. And subscribe, because fairies are real. If you have any questions, again, drop them in the comments, and have a blessed day.